And hello, so good to be with you, be back with you. Looking forward to our discussion this evening very, very much. As on our Wednesday night series, we are going through the book of Revelation, and we are currently in chapter 8. Revelation chapter 8. So we have the Apostle John on the island of Patmos right here, off the coast of Asia Minor there. And so, a quick recap to bring us to chapter 8. So, the first chapter, we get John on the island, and he's there being exiled, banished by Roman Emperor Domitian, about the year 96. So, we are, of course, at the end of the Bible, not just the last book in your Bibles, it's also the last book written. And so, if John were in his 20s in Christ's ministry, which was from 29 to 33, we're 60 years after that, so he'd be in his 80s now if that were the case. All the other apostles have been martyred. He's the last one standing. And so while he's here on this island, he receives a revelation, a revealing from Jesus Christ, which is where we get our title. The Greek word apocalypse for it simply means the unveiling or the pulling back of the curtain. So that's introductory stuff from chapter 1 and chapter 2. Jesus gives him letters for the 7 churches of Asia, which are all right there, addressed to the angels or the stars or the messengers of each of those churches. That's chapters 2 and 3. In chapter 4, John is caught up in a vision of heaven itself, where he sees the Father on the throne and all the glory and worship. Chapter 5, Jesus, the Lamb of God, comes forward and takes the scroll from the Father on his throne, the scroll that has the 7 seals that no one else is worthy to open. That's chapter 5. So chapter 6, Jesus begins to open the seals, the 7 seals on the scroll. The first 4 seals are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The 5th seal is the martyrs under the altar. And the 6th seal is the beginning of the natural disasters and things that will be happening on physical earth. In chapter 7, we get a sealing. There's a pause, and we get before further destruction happens. And it's often thought that verse 6 brought us right to the end of the tribulation period, the 3.5 years before the Lord returns and his day of wrath, cleaning a house and setting things straight. It's thought that 6 takes us right up to the end of that, and then 7 brings us back to the beginning, where there is a sealing of the 144,000, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's on earth. Then up in heaven, John sees all these folks from every tribe and nation and tongue and given white robes, and has a discussion with one of the elders about who these are, and these are referred to as the tribulation saints. Those who had set themselves aside through church membership and their baptismal vows as servants, and they were set aside, sanctified, and all that stuff, and an ongoing process for many of us. And they were martyred during the tribulation. So churches here during the tribulation for there to be church saints murdered in that tribulation. And so then the 7th seal, beginning of chapter 8, takes us to the trumpets. So we will read chapter 8, refresh it, and go on to pick up our discussion on Wormwood. So Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. Revelation 8:1. When the Lamb broke the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him, so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense ascended from the angel's hand with the prayers of the saints before God. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and hurled it to the earth. And there were peals of thunder and sounds, and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. The first sounded, and there was hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was hurled into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters. The star is named Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the waters because they were made bitter. The fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same way. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. So that is Revelation chapter 8. We've been focusing on Wormwood, but before I get there, as we've refreshed the introduction and the 7 chapters that got us here, reread chapter 8, does anyone have any reactions or thoughts that struck them or questions before we dive into Wormwood? Brother Clay.
Back to in verse 7. There came hail and fire mixed with blood, and then when something goes into the water, there's nothing but it turns to blood. What's the significance? Is there blood coming down from with the hail and fire mixed with blood?
Great question. So Brother Clay asks if what's the significance of the blood mixed with the hail and fire here? I see 2 parallels. One, we have from Exodus chapter 9 with the plagues. There's a plague of the hail, and there was blood involved because of the hail striking. They were warned, bring all your livestock in because anything that's outside is going to get butchered, with this hail. So there's that, as well as the brimstone and fire coming down from with Sodom and Gomorrah as well. So I think that the blood is significant, that just as there are different images of Christ with his blood shed and images of him having the blood of others on him as he's treading the grapes of his wrath and the wine cup of his fury and all that stuff. So there's the blood of the enemies as well as the blood of Christ himself sacrificed, different applications. So this being hurled to the earth, so we're not told anything further about this, but obviously blood is life. Blood is very precious to God. He says right from the beginning there with Noah coming off the ark, anyone that takes a man's life, then his life's going to be taken because their life is in the blood. So blood is very, very precious to God. So anytime you see blood being used or applied, it's one of those sit up and take notice things. So I'm really glad you asked about it. I think the answer here is that this first trumpet is a huge attention getter, and the others are just following bam, bam, bam right after it. And so I think the blood is very significant for God saying this is not normal. This is not a regular natural hail storm. In fact, hail and fire, which is pretty significant too. And we talked about that going through the Exodus. What is hail made out of?
Well,
Water. So frozen water. Okay. So we've got frozen water and fire. What happens when you put frozen water and fire together? Yeah.
well, yeah.
They usually don't last together very long. So this is pretty powerful, just getting a little into the physics here. Of course, the supernatural as well, but even just on the natural physics, for hail and fire not to consume each other, that has to be a pretty powerful inertia and force. They're coming to Earth with that blood. So this is a not natural event in that sense too. So very, very attention getting. So I'm really glad you drew attention to that because it's worth noting and not just breezing by and glossing over.
About the hail
Yeah.
and the fire and the blood. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an attention getter, and that, but if, the fire is hot
Mhm.
and you have ice, he actually can explode,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
you know, like. These
Thermal shock.
Fire tank, you know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the combustion of that as well, having its effect. So yeah, good stuff. I'm really glad you brought that up. Anything else from anyone on 1 through 7, or what we're looking at with chapter 8 here before we get back to our friend Wormwood? So with Wormwood, while we are anxiously waiting to get back to Brother Worski's book, The Revelation of Jesus Christ, His Return, His Judgment, and His Kingdom, and what dear Brother Worski has to say on Revelation chapter 8, we've been getting the bulk of Wormwood stuff from the book, as well, of course, Revelation first and foremost, but some thoughts on the book, The Wormwood Prophecy by Thomas Horn. And again, with human authors, again, just like me, we're human, we can get things wrong. Bible trumps all of us. So we've looked at, through the Wormwood prophecy, we've looked at the thought of Wormwood being an object from space. Like an asteroid that would hit and end up being a meteorite. We've talked about Wormwood being possibly a fallen angel and the spiritual application there. And last week we talked about Wormwood, what it actually is physically versus what it's not physically, and on from there. So we'll refresh that. But before we do, show and tell. I'm so happy to be back. I didn't have visuals last week. I was actually saving them for this week. So brought them all together here. So on the idea of Wormwood being an NEO, a near-Earth object, asteroid, etc., it was mentioned that mathematician Harry Lear asserted the claim that this one asteroid named Apophis, that in their calculations for the trajectory of the asteroid and the trajectory of Earth, that they were using, NASA was possibly using the wrong figure for pi, 3.141592,654. He's saying it should have been 3.144,605,511. I guess use different ones depending on what you're doing. And he also mentioned that the golden ratio number calculated 1.618,033,989. I mentioned that we'll eventually come back to the golden ratio, and so that's what we're going to do right now. So we remember pi from geometry classes in high school. This golden ratio thing, this 1.6, et cetera, we're about to show right now. But why, when NASA and these folks are studying the cosmos, why are they using pi? Why are they using this golden ratio? What is it? What is it about this golden ratio that we observe that makes it significant? And does this tell us something about God? So I have, yes, an educational video on the golden ratio here. So we'll let this run and tell me what you think afterwards.
Imagine if there was a perfect number, a single number so flawless it formed the basis for all art and music. A number so important that it could be used across the disciplines of mathematics and physics, and a number so profoundly purposeful that the natural world and the universe would bend to its whims. That number is 1.618034. So let's find out why it's so important. At number 5, an explanation. The Fibonacci sequence is a string of numbers that begins with 0 and 1, which can be extended infinitely by adding up any two consecutive numbers to find the next in the sequence. When we add 0 and 1, we get 1, which is the third Fibonacci number. Then we add 1 and 1 to obtain our fourth Fibonacci number, which is 2. And if we continue with this elementary exercise, in addition, we get the numbers 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, etc., in a pattern that can be extended all the way to infinity. The sequence was introduced to the West in 1202 by Leonardo of Pisa, also known as Fibonacci, although it had already been identified by Indian mathematicians over 1,000 years beforehand. But this guy from Pisa shouted first, so he gets to name it after himself. That's just how things work. As the world began to develop its understanding of mathematics, we soon realized this string of digits was of fundamental importance, and today we apply this knowledge in all manner of practical ways. Search algorithms, stock trading, gambling odds all make use of the Fibonacci sequence, but the way in which you have most likely encountered it is via the mysterious golden ratio, which appears in more random stuff than MSG and Jesse Hyman combined.
As I'm in the midst of applying for residency right now, wish me luck, Grammarly has again been a lifesaver with my application.
I'm happy for you.
At 4, the golden ratio. The golden ratio is a mathematical term used to describe the relationship of two figures, whereby the numbers seem to be in some form of complementary ratio. If you have a number A and a lower number B, then the two are in the golden ratio if the ratio between A versus B is similar to the ratio between the sum of A plus B versus A. The Greek letter ascribed to this ratio is phi, and its value was contracted to 1.618034. Basically, anything which comes close to this value in terms of its ratio is said to be perfectly proportioned. For example, a rectangle that measures 12.94 by 8 centimeters is in the golden ratio, because 12.94 divided by 8 is 1.6175. And if we add the width and length of the rectangle together to get 20.94, the ratio between this and the longer side, 12.94, is 1.6182. The golden ratio can be used to calculate perfect spirals, golden triangles, and other shapes and patterns too. But what does this have to do with the Fibonacci sequence? At 3, the link. To link the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, we must look at the ratio between two consecutive Fibonacci numbers and observe the pattern this ratio takes as you go on. Because it turns out that the further along the Fibonacci sequence you go, the closer the ratio between any two numbers is to the golden ratio. The ratio between 3 and 2 is 1.5. The ratio between 5 and 3 is 1.66. And if we skip along a few to see the ratio between the 12th and 13th Fibonacci numbers, we'll see that their ratio is 1.6179. The ratio between 144 and 233 is 1.6180, and so on and so forth. As we mentioned earlier, the golden ratio is 1.618034. So clearly the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence have some sort of link which we haven't worked out yet. And that is why so many smart folks have become absolutely obsessed with it. At number 2, the uses. The golden ratio has fascinated the world's most knowledgeable people for millennia since its discovery, and we have seen its influence in some of the finest works mankind has ever produced. Plato's study into the golden ratio was used in the designs of the Parthenon. The Egyptians displayed it in the planning and construction of the pyramids, and the likes of the Taj Mahal, Notre Dame, and the Great Mosque of Kairouan were also built according to this important mathematical law. Artists from Da Vinci to Dali also incorporated the golden ratio in the layout of their paintings, and the ratio can also be detected in the music of Debussy, Bach, Mozart, Chopin, and Beethoven. Even the Bible mentions things being constructed in the golden ratio, with Noah's Ark and the Ark of the Covenant both built in accordance with the ratio-driven commandments laid down by God. However, the one thing we're not entirely sure about is whether any or all of this was deliberate. Modern artists and architects know about the golden ratio and are known to apply it purposefully to their works. And we know that at least some historical buildings and artworks were created by people who knew of the golden ratio and its value. But this inexplicably pleasing proportion has been used by people ignorant of its existence too. So, is the golden ratio merely something which all human beings are attracted to? Is it something that we find inherently satisfying? And is this love of the number 1.618034 limited only to humans? And at number 1, nature's design. Is the golden ratio a universal law applied by nature? The evidence seems to suggest so, and the aforementioned Leonardo da Vinci may have alluded to this in some of his most famous works. The Divina Proporzioni was a mathematical textbook illustrated by da Vinci in 1498, and in both this and his drawing of the Vitruvian Man, he points out examples of the golden ratio found within the human body. Psychologists have also noted that people whose facial, body, and bone structures adhere to the golden ratio are often deemed to be more attractive than their non-proportional counterparts. And if you'd like to pause the video to go measure your face right now, we totally understand. But you might want to hold on a second, because the most shocking example of the golden ratio within human beings is far more interesting. Did you know that the golden ratio even applies to our DNA? It's true, as both our double helix spirals and the composition of a single DNA molecule both seem to have been made in accordance with the divine proportion of the golden ratio. And it's not just humans either, as we've seen the ratio demonstrated in the shells of snails, the number of petals in a flower, and the arrangement of individual seeds within seed heads. Pine cones, tree branches, and root systems also follow the golden ratio, as do some forms of algae and the bodies of certain animals. Some creatures even live according to the golden ratio, with honeybee colonies known to maintain a ratio of males to females at 1 to 1.618. So, is this ratio evidence that nature has been somehow designed? Was everything on Earth created by a god or advanced extraterrestrial race to adhere to a certain number? It does look a little suspicious, especially when you also find out that the golden ratio also applies to hurricanes, spiral galaxies, and objects at the quantum level too. We're going to explore this idea in our bonus video, The Golden Ratio, Evidence of Intelligent Design, which you can watch on our Patreon page at patreon.com/strange mysteries. For a $2 a month pledge, which you can cancel at any time, you'll get to watch this, and indeed all of our bonus content, which goes deeper and darker into every topic than YouTube allows.
Now, how much would you pay? So,
This, you know, if you're talking about, I know the gold ratio is 1.66. The opposite, and then the symbol they use for pi does not what I'm used to seeing.
pi and the golden ratio are two different things.
Right, but he did keep, in the beginning, he was talking about pi.
Phi.
Oh, he was saying phi.
Phi. Yeah, different Greek letter. Yeah. Yeah, just think, David.
3.14. So I'm hearing pi.
Yeah, just think Jack and the Beanstalk and the giant fee fi fo fum. I want some pie. Ooh, giant sized pie. That sounds good. So both the number for pi with different possibilities for that depending on the application, 3.141592654. Or as Harry Lear is saying, it should have been 3.144605511. And then the golden ratio they were using for these trajectories of this asteroid Apophis and for Earth, 1.618033989. He's saying that because they're using the wrong number for pi, and with these numbers they're using, that the trajectories they're calculating for Earth and Apophis are off. And so what's actually going to happen that they're not realizing, if they don't correct for this, or unless they double check and make sure that he's wrong, which would be great if he is, that Apophis will crash into Earth on April 13th, 2029. And so there's a thought that everything that's going on with Space Force and NASA is really trying to hunker down and minimize upcoming damage and all that stuff. So that's that thought. So reactions to the golden ratio in nature and science and all that stuff. Coincidence? Intelligent design? What do y'all think? Yes, no, maybe so?
God's design is perfect no matter what.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, I go back to the scientific revolution where folks were observing the details, but giving God the credit and the glory that these were the details that God was using in his creation. So there is that. So we mentioned last time about wormwood, what it is not. And so with that, we talked about how actual physical wormwood plant, the herb, is commonly known is this one right here. It's called common wormwood. It is known as Artemisia absinthium. There it is, Artemisia absinthium. So that's what wormwood looks, that's common wormwood right there.
Where I came
Under
from,
that.
Yeah,
all down the desert, we have grown.
yeah, there you go.
And there's several varieties.
Yep.
But I did see the kind that I've seen down there, and I'm wondering why this wormwood stuck in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And because down there, the canal system,
Yeah,
that they assign a name to them.
okay,
So they know, which canal, and
makes sense.
the name of one of them.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah.
Okay,
And the eucalyptus, and, they use, for an area, they must have used indigenous plants.
gotcha. That would make sense. And so, as we touched on last week, wrapping up some of those thoughts and bringing them back forward as we go here, looking at the visuals to link them up. Wormwood is most popularly known as the main herbal ingredient in the alcoholic beverage absinthe.
What's the name of the beverage?
Absinthe, like absinthium there. Yeah, so let's resume this and let's go.
The good with Coke?
Let's see.
What are you grinning about?
That, yeah. So I'm like, I know that fun.
So
Well, French.
absinthe, the drink was commonly referred to as the Green Fairy, La Fée Verte in French, due to Paris's late 1800s bohemian hallucinogenic fairy icon, the liberator of artistic minds. And the drink had a glowing color. So that's kind of the idea back there for that. But it actually turns out that the wormwood of the Bible is not the common wormwood. It is actually Artemisia herba alba, the Pyrenean wormwood, or the white wormwood is the kind that is actually referred to and seen in the Bible and in the Bible lands. So that's the difference there. So I thought about how to actually see pictures of these different things of wormwood that we're talking about. And so, moral of the story for wormwood in Revelation chapter 8, it has nothing to do with the plant. It has nothing to do with the drink, nothing to do with any of this. And we talked about how the word wormwood, especially going back to the Bible usage and where it's referenced in Hebrew, is referring to the curse and the bitterness of the curse. So we talked about that. So one more reference of wormwood worth discussing, and that is Chernobyl. There is Chernobyl in Ukraine. Notice how it's sealed shut right now. Yeah, it's being isolated and somewhat protected there. So what does Chernobyl have to do with wormwood? And what are the thoughts here? So refreshing our memories, on Saturday, April 26th of 1986, the number 4 reactor here at Chernobyl nuclear plant in Ukraine was experiencing some technical difficulties. Power surge ruptured the reactor, resulting in massive radioactive contamination, exploded into the atmosphere for 9 straight days, spread into parts of the USSR and Western Europe. Within days, just under 120,000 people were evacuated from the area, and that grew to more than 300,000 in the coming years. The containment efforts and endeavors since the day of the accident to as recently as what we're seeing here, the 2017 Chernobyl New Safe Confinement Project, have been ongoing, continuing. The estimated completion year for cleanup is said to be the year 2065. This is the worst nuclear disaster in the history of the world. And so why does why are we talking about Chernobyl when we're talking about Wormwood? Chernobyl is Ukrainian for wormwood. Yeah. So then that naturally draws some questions. But when we read in Revelation chapter 8, verse 10, the third angel sounded, great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters. The star is named Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood. Many people died from the waters because they were made bitter. While there was a lot of suffering and catastrophe and loss due to Chernobyl here in that event, it certainly wasn't a third of the planet. It wasn't a third of all the waters. Wasn't the entire world population, and it wasn't during the time of the Antichrist when all these other events, there weren't two trumpets before it for this to be the third trumpet and all that. So Thomas Horn mentions this. Chernobyl is Ukrainian for wormwood. On paper, that looks as if it means something. However, Chernobyl is also the city nearby the power plant of the same name. Both are dubbed such because of the herb wormwood, which we showed to be unrelated to Revelation, and that herb grows in that area. So he makes this observation. If wild roses had coincidentally grown there instead, the area of the nuclear plant explosion may have been called roses, or troyandy, the Ukrainian word for roses. And the entire Wormwood connection would then fall flat. So just happens to be named that because the plant's there and has nothing to do with prophecy or anything like that.
Wonder in the moment could help it case.
I hear you. So there's that. Here is, so let me zoom out here. So that's the containment there. And the city, Chernobyl, is down here with that. Yeah. So here is what it looks like now. There it is. And it's a stainless steel, all sorts of reinforcements and efforts to keep it well contained. So there's that. But then let's see. Then an interesting thing happened. Let's see, where do I want to go from here? Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. February 14th of 2025, just a couple months ago, Chernobyl was hit with a drone from Russia. And that's the engine of the drone that struck. And in fact, we have right here the actual video of the drone hitting Chernobyl. Again, this was just a couple of months ago, Valentine's Day of this year. Let's see. So while we're trying to keep all this contained, that hole got poked in it. So yeah, there's that. But as it relates to our intents and purposes and our study, let's see why that pencil's on there. Yeah, that's something new. Usually escape gets rid of something. Oh, I've got that locked up now. See, stop share. There we go. Stop share. There we go. Now we're back. Go back to share. Okay, that got rid of that. Okay. So one last thing about Wormwood that's worth making note of while we're here. Show the video. Right here we have in the city of Ukraine, we have this statue that's known as the third angel. The third angel of Revelation 8, blowing the trumpet, heralding the arrival of Wormwood. Kind of interesting that they would choose to make this here, but that's what they have there. So wormwood is a plant. It is not the wormwood of the Bible is not the plant used in the drink. And Chernobyl means wormwood just because the plant is there. And even though there's a statue of the third angel blowing the third trumpet, that doesn't mean it has anything to do with the actual events, which are still future. So that wraps up Wormwood from that perspective. Any reactions, thoughts on any of that? Pretty straightforward, is what it is. So with that, so one of the thoughts of how wormwood would cause things to become bitter. One of the things that happens, like we see with past histories of volcano activity, volcanoes in the waters, one of the things they do, actual poisoning from the bitter waters might be brought on by seismic activity, earthquakes, release toxic gases into our freshwater sources. Arsenic is absolutely one of the examples where that has happened. You're absolutely right. That has happened in the past. So bring it from the second trumpet into this third, he makes this observation. So Revelation's second trumpet, described as the great mountain burning with fire, turns water to blood, kills a third of all sea life in the ships. That was verses 8 and 9. That's frequently thought to be a volcano. The description matches, since a volcano is a mountain exploding with fire. Volcanic eruption can result in colossal sections of mountain's mass separating and casting itself off the main body. That happened with Santorini or Thera a few times, and we'll talk about that in Sunday school as we get there. So even though it sounds like it might be where the first trumpet was casting the hail from heaven, and we see that this fiery mountain is cast off, it doesn't necessarily mean it's cast from heaven. It doesn't specifically say that. So it could be just that this happens on earth and it splits up and is cast into the sea from there. So Wormwood could be the catalyst of a repeat judgment like the Exodus plagues, but this time on a global scale with these activities and the release of these poisonous gases. And certainly arsenic would be a very prime example. It actually happened on September 15th of 2007 in Caracas, Peru. There was an asteroid that hit a 7 to 12 ton chunk of chondrite space rock, hit at 27,000 miles an hour, heated to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the villagers were struck with an illness. And as heavy as this thing was, it's only the size of a dinette set, basically, as it's described as. And so this sickness could be considered, in fact, the people said they felt like they were cursed. The clinics around Caracas were filling with the patients who were vomiting, including the policemen. News reporters were scrambling to get the story on bizarre nosebleed outbreak of nearby cows and livestock, and only hours after the impact. So they were describing it as, wow, there's a curse that's happening here. And the symptoms increased in intensity. They had medical tents all set up. First 100 or so patients, then 600, livestock starting to die. Then it just all of a sudden got better. Turns out what had happened was arsenic, to your point, in the water table had been heated and vaporized by the impact energy and sent into the air as gas. So engineer Renan Ramirez of the Peruvian Nuclear Energy Institute says it's a conventional meteorite that, when it struck, produced gases by fusing with elements of the terrain, arsenic poisoning. And so the good news is it dissipated and folks healed. And so that is something that could very well happen with wormwood. So that is that. And final thoughts on Revelation chapter 8 from Thomas Horn here. Keep in mind, this is going to be happening during the time of the Antichrist, during the time of this great tribulation. And so when the Antichrist is in charge of the news media with his one world government and all that stuff, so the answers that we're going to be getting from authorities as to what's happening are not going to be legit. We could call it fake news. But there will be those who try to stand up to it and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't work. This doesn't make sense. But they'll be written off as crazy conspiracy theorist types. And so what he sees happening based on Revelation, and we'll see more of this as we go, the nature of many men in those days will be to deny God or his works until the very end, despite the great revival that spawns from the two witnesses. We'll get to those in chapter 10 and others, and the prophesied judgments. A lot of people will be turning to God through all of this. Praise God. Some will see blood fall from the sky, followed by whatever form the second trumpet takes on, and they'll harbor great doubt in their heart and minds regarding the authorities' explanation, if the authorities are still trying at this point. Those last two seals and the first two trumpets might happen in rapid succession and look so supernatural that their efforts are completely shifted to now they're broadcasting the Antichrist's wonders and peace talks. Hey, he's going to be the savior. He's going to be the one to deliver us through all this. But they will spend more mental and emotional energy proclaiming any theory over the written truth in Revelation, so they can avoid being accountable to the God of the Bible. These trumpets are cosmic. It's all about the heavens raining judgment, in Thomas Horn's opinion, and they'll happen so fast, no time to recover. Relief, rescue organizations, scientists, astronomers, even astrologists, NASA, all governments of the world, everyone will be overwhelmed with the constant disaster reparation agenda, will not allow progress to be made before the next judgment renders the last one irrelevant. It's going to be boom, boom, boom. Many will be deceived into believing the lies and deceit of the Antichrist, and in his opinion, atheism will likely be obsolete. Everyone's going to be worshiping someone or something, Christ or Antichrist. And so with all of this, the curse upon Pharaoh will look like small beans. So this is going to be worldwide Exodus type stuff here. Final thought, Revelation 8:12. Fourth angel sounded, third of the sun, third of the moon, third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same way. That verse, taken literally in context, illustrates that the cosmic disturbance will be completely unprecedented, unlike anything our solar system has experienced. Furthermore, this upheaval will permanently change things on Earth. How could it not? There is no reparation that can be made for the type of damage that will occur for our planet and its surrounding orbital bodies during this catastrophic event. The ramifications of this trumpet and the following, coming up in chapter 9, are so severe that the angel soars through the heaven, the angel soars through heaven, shouting woes to them that must endure the things that are yet to take place. That will be in Revelation chapter 9. So that's Thomas Horn on Wormwood and Revelation chapter 8. Reactions, thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, Brother Clay.
The way it, reads,
Yeah,
okay, I can understand that, a third of the day, we'll just divide it in half, right?
right.
Alright, so.
I'm following
we get
you.
12 hours of sunshine,
Yeah.
now we're gonna get 9.
Yeah.
But how do you get, take away a third of darkness?
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
Did that third of light get shifted from day to night? And is it going to be in the middle? So now you've got a third less darkness, which means you've got light? Yeah. Or it's just going to be that much darker. Where at night you at least have the stars. Maybe it's just going to be a third of the night lights of the sky are going to be gone. I don't know. Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, sun goes out up there.
Yeah.
The windows sure let in a inch of darkness.
Yep. Yeah. So a third of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same way. So yeah, I'm not sure what that's going to look like based on the simple understanding of, we get what it's saying, but basically a third of the day is going to be impacted, and a third of the night is somehow going to be impacted. Well, how that technically plays out and rolls out, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure we'll recognize it when it happens and go, okay, wow, there it is. There's no denying that. Again, this is supernatural. This is stuff that has never happened before. That's happening. And again, just as Brother Clay said, with the blood and the hail, this is attention getting. This is the last shaking of things before Christ's return and his judgment before the 1,000-year millennium. So yeah, people are only going to be able to write it off for so long and not very long. Then it's a matter of what are we going to do with it. And as Dan says, those who have insight will understand, be able to help others. And that's where we want to be. We want to be aware of these things, prepared for them, and therefore we can be amazed, but hopefully not surprised, because it will happen exactly as the words of God's word tell us. However, people may try to hook and jive and try to explain away, or not look at this or look at that over there instead. The best thing we can do is just see exactly what's being said here in God's word and understand whether Wormwood is a meteorite that hits, whether it's a fallen angel. And we know it's not related to Chernobyl. We know it's not related to the plants here. It's going to be this curse upon the waters, making them bitter. However it's brought about, this is what's going to be the end result. And that's what we're going to see play out from there. Any other thoughts, reactions, comments that help? Is that kind of clearing it up a little more? And while we see God's hand in these disasters that are being unleashed, as these trumpets of God, God's angels are declaring these trumpets from heaven, announcing and unleashing these things, understand too, and that's the reason why I opened with the video on the intelligent design of the golden ratio, seeing kind of the majesty of natural creation and its beauty. The same God who is the author of the creation will be the author of the two negatives to make a positive, if you will, the undoing of the damage by shaking things up and bringing about the resolution to where we're going to have this glorious millennium, Christ reigning on earth, then a final unleashing of Satan and his end, and then ushering in the age of ages after he's taken care of. So good things to look forward to. The same God is in control of all of it. And I pray that ultimately we are encouraged. We feel a little more informed and aware and prepared, and that much more strengthened as we go about our day-to-day here. Again, this could be 10 years from now. This could be 100 years from now. It could be 1,000 years from now. I don't know. All I know is God says it. Here it is. And it's there for us to know. So with that, we'll go ahead and stop our screen share for now. We'll stop our recording for this class. And let's get ready to stand, meet in the center, and close out in our season of prayer together.